What's the most frustrating thing a neighbor has done that you couldn't complain about? 5 years ago, I lived in a gated apartment community where everything looked like it had been copy-pasted. Identical blocks, identical balconies, identical paint, identical rules. The HOA saw individuality as some kind of threat, and they enforced their guidelines with surprising speed. No decor on patios, no hanging items from balcony walls, no visible plants on ledges. Furniture was allowed, but only the kind they approved, which meant the cheapest white plastic sets that looked like they'd collapse if you stared at them too hard. Despite the restrictions, I genuinely enjoyed the peace and order of the place. I was 29 at the time, working, studying photography on the side, and living a pretty simple life. My patio was my quiet escape. I had a few potted plants on the railing and a small collection of metal vintage motorcycle posters on the inner patio wall. Nothing wild or flashy. They weren't even visible from most angles of the complex, but they made the space feel like mine. Directly below me lived Mrs. Ellis, a kind older woman who enjoyed smoking in her garden. She was always friendly, always polite, but her smoke drifted straight into my apartment. In the summer, I kept my sliding door open to let the heat escape, and the smoke seeped into my furniture and bedding until my pillow smelled like a cigarette break room. I didn't want to fight with her, so after talking to her once and seeing nothing change, I emailed the estate manager at the time, Nicole, hoping for guidance. Her reply was short and final. It's her home, and there is no law preventing her from smoking on her patio. That was it. I didn't want to cause trouble, so I accepted the answer and let it go. I lived with the smell and kept the windows open anyway because the heat was unbearable otherwise. About a year later, Nicole left and was replaced by a new manager, Stuart. A few weeks into his role, he emailed me with an attached photo of my patio. He said the potted plants on my railing had to come down because they could fall and injure someone. He also said the metal posters needed to be removed because they were aesthetically displeasing. I wasn't thrilled. I took a moment, then replied with the politest sarcasm I could manage. I assured him I'd remove the posters immediately to protect the community from the apparent visual crisis of my vintage motorcycle collection. I joked about submitting a family portrait for approval, though I wasn't sure if my parents' faces met HOA beauty standards. I mentioned how the plastic patio furniture some residents used seemed far more painful to look at, but somehow passed inspection. Then I brought up the smoke issue again. I explained how my health concern had been brushed aside, yet the appearance of my inner patio wall had become an urgent matter. I said it felt odd that someone could fill my home with cigarette fumes without breaking a single rule, yet I couldn't decorate the space I paid for because someone might not like how it looked. I wasn't rude, just honest, and I made it clear I didn't think the rules were being applied fairly. I sent it in the early evening, expecting a reply the next morning. Instead, I got a response 30 minutes later. Stuart said he thoroughly enjoyed my email, understood my frustration, and would look into the smoking issue. I thanked him and assumed that would be the end of it. But around 8 p.m., he emailed again. He had reviewed the regulations and found that smoking was only permitted inside the unit or at least 5 meters away from any shared or public area, which included balconies. He said he would speak to my downstairs neighbor once he had her unit number. I practically ran downstairs to check the number and emailed him back within minutes. I thanked him repeatedly, told him he'd saved me from a lifetime of smoky pillows, and even joked about how I wouldn't need to worry about anything accidentally falling off my patio after all. I made sure to state clearly that I was joking. I didn't want my humor misunderstood. That was the last email I received from him, but the effect was immediate. Mrs. Ellis stopped smoking under my windows. The smell disappeared from my apartment. My plants and posters stayed down, but honestly, I didn't care anymore. Fresh air was worth far more than metal signs. For the next 2 years, I lived in total peace. No smoke, no complaints, and no more rule debates. When I eventually bought a house with my wife, I moved out of that identical little complex with a feeling of relief. No more balcony inspections, no decor rules, no emailed photos of my own patio. But every now and then, I remember that short, intense email exchange. I like to imagine Stuart somewhere, years later, still smiling at that thread pinned above his desk. Proof that even in a strict, uniform, paint-matched world, a little humor and persistence can go a long way.